What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the second episode of Unpopular Opinion. I'm just keep it rolling. You know, people fumble on camera sometimes. Whatever. We hear no filter. All right. This topic we're going to be talking about is why your equity statements are trash within your company. I'm going to hand it over to our subject matter expertise, ChrisTiana, and let them do their thing. Go ahead, ChrisTiana, and tell these people why their equity statements are trash.
Here's the thing. You're writing your equity statement, you're likely not doing the thing, right? The biggest thing with equity statements that I notice is that we as humans have this tendency to want to have instant gratification. As a matter of fact, we have been studying the need for delayed gratification for at least throughout my lifetime. And a difficulty that I've seen with equity statements is that people write it and they have this false sense of accomplishment, and that's if they write it at all. In the last month or two, one of the biggest complaints or pain points that I have received as a consultant was from a person who is BIPOC or Black Indigenous person of color, usually Black folks, who are contacting me and saying, my organization wants a Black Lives Matter statement. So they told me, the Black person, to write the Black Lives Matter statement that they are then going to co-opt and put on their organization, and then they're going to do the thing after the fact, but likely take their sweet time. You know, Martin Luther King said in his letter to Birmingham jail about the white moderate, that the weaponization of time for being both too fast and too slow is one of the biggest hindrances to equity work in general. And this is not just around racial equity and Black Lives Matter. This is also in terms of things like the ADA or in terms of things like economic crises. We are seeing a lot of these issues right now with our policies and our procedures, who we're bringing into these task forces, these change teams, who are actually going to be able to have the leadership of those most impacted, who's going to have the most nuanced understanding. But we stay with people with surface level understanding, coming up with surface level solutions, and then regurgitating that onto a statement so that they can continue to have that sort of outward facing, oh, look, we're doing this work. But where in this equity statement is your action plan? Where's your accountability structure? What exactly is your benchmarks towards your goals? What are you going to do? Perhaps instead of having an equity statement reactively, perhaps do the work of figuring out where your pain points and bottlenecks towards equity lies, and then give us an accountability statement. What have you done while you went through your process of seeing where you were, where you are, where you want to be, and how you're going to scaffold your way there? I don't want to know what you're going to do. I want to know what you've already done. And I want to know what you've already done in terms of actual structural change in your policies, in your procedures, in your culture shift, in your leadership change, because I'm pretty sure you don't have a lot of intersectional leadership in those things.
Come on.
And how you're going to bring in the amplify the voices and experiences of those most impacted in the intersectional way. Until then, I don't want to hear anything from you. Don't talk about it, be about it. That's how I'm going to say.
Right. And you said it very well, that equity statements are one of the most reactive things I've seen. And especially in light of George Floyd's death and Breonna Taylor, all of a sudden I'm on Twitter and every company is posting their support statement. And I'm like, are you though, really? Because I just looked at your diversity numbers and your equity statement seems to be aspirational, as should your numbers, because they are not representative of what you're putting out in the world. And another thing that pisses me off is, like, this been a problem, you know, like the injustices that Black people and other racially stigmatized identities have faced at the hands of police brutality is not new to us. But in 2020, all of a sudden it's a statement and you hear for it, but you've never said that before, you know? And so it's like the most reactive thing that I've seen from a company. And I feel like I'm like, don't write the statement, make the statement first, and then write what you've done. And if you haven't, stop bombarding us with your support statements that, to be honest, for many of us have just become very meaningless because your actions are contradictory. And so when I see it, I'm like, man, get that shit the fuck out of my face.
Right.
Right. And I think especially too, like in a space of like, it's important to, if whatever it is that you're actually doing it for what the community needs. Like, I don't need you to like change the you know, sure, you're going to take Aunt Jemima off the syrup. Does that mean you're also going to give some of the proceeds that you've made off of Aunt Jemima syrup to the descendants of this family? Are you actually going to bring any equity to it? Or are you just saying it? Because I really think it's important for people to do this work. And then also the last thing, newsflash. The Black person at your organization is not the one that needed to do the work to write the Black Lives Matter statement. So if that's what happened, that statement itself is not, it is the cherished work and gift of that Black person to write that statement. But as an organization, you do not have a right to lay claim to anything in that statement, because it has nothing to do with any change work that actually happened in your organization.
For sure.
X. I like to call this year the year of exposure. 2020 is literally just exposing everybody and every company and every system, right?
Right.
It's literally what it is. I actually feel like the past 7 years have been like years of exposure, but particularly this year has been the year of exposure. So for me, when I see companies write an equity statement or a diversity statement or whatever statement it is, I just want them to tell the damn truth. And instead be open and be vulnerable and say, we fucked up. Hi, we're this company, we fucked up. We're going to try better. And then before they put out what they're doing, right, which is bullshit, actually do it first and then come back later and say, here's what we've done and here's the numbers to prove it. We're still learning and we're still trying to get there. So for me, I think you need to come out and be honest, right? Like people want to work for companies that are honest and that are open. So come out and say that you've messed up, you fucked up, you need to do better, right? And then do better and then put out what you've done. And that those two things should be matched.
And that's such a great point, because you know, you'll write an equity statement as a consultant. We tend to sometimes write those for companies. And the thing that where I stop is where if I send it to someone's leadership team and they want to edit it and say, oh, well, we don't want to be too vulnerable. I'm like, that's what allyship is. If you call out where you messed up because you jumping in the fire with us, that's what allyship is. So if your company has these gaps, you need to call that out in your equity statement. That's what equity is. It's meeting people where they are, but first you need to know where they are. And people have to be honest about where that is. And then after they've done that, you say, now here's how we plan to show up and change it. If you don't do that, your equity statement is completely garbage and is superficial and not intentional in the way allyship should be.
Absolutely. And even I'm glad you brought that up about allyship, because I think there are some people that romanticize the idea of being an ally, and they have this thing where they're going to swoop in and save the day and fix all the shit. And it's not realistic at all. Like, it's hard work. It's uncomfortable. You will get cussed out. Your feelings will get hurt. And you still have to show up the next day and keep fighting for the same people who are pissed off at you trying to be the hero. Yeah. Like, and then even trying to come in and think that you all have all the answers for how to fix this without even talking to the people that have been marginalized in the first place. Like, you come in with your ideas of what needs to be changed, and you're not listening to the people and actually giving them what they want. I don't even know if y'all saw this about, there was a real estate company. I want to say it was in Texas or something, but they were talking about taking the word master off of bathrooms and not calling these master bathrooms. Nobody asked for that. Nobody asked for that.
What?
No,
and we
didn't ask for that.
If y'all not focusing on redlining and how it's impacted the neighborhood and the house that you sell, we don't care.
That part. Forget it. Nobody even thought about master bedrooms that way till y'all said that. We didn't think about that.
Right. And then the allies kill me with that. They're like, I'm just trying to help you. I'm like, do you understand that the reason populations need allyship is because there's trauma there based on discrimination. So if you come into our space, I ain't saying that we have the right to put you in danger or hurt you. But what I am saying to you is that you better understand that you unpacking baggage with us. Right? And then it's not your job to understand it. It's just your job to accept that the reason why it's there, it is the reason that created your allyship in the first place. And if you can't do that, kick rocks.
With no shoes on.
With no shoes on. And the rocks. Go ahead. I'm done.
No, I was just going to say, getting into the rocks. Speaking of the rocks, I think that, what's also frustrating about these equity statements is these equity statements are holding conversation points that I know, at least for myself, both personally and as a consultant, I have either been reprimanded or dismissed for saying some of these things, or that I have been brought in to mediate reprimanding or dismissing, especially folks at the intersection of these, like the most impacted lived experiences around these things that these allies are going out here and saying, feeling like they can just go out and say this and then not also account for the harm that they have done in the past. I always say privilege are identities that you don't have to think about every single constant every day. It's not impacting you. You have a choice to think about this. If you want to turn it off, you can. And what's difficult about that is for folks who don't have that privilege to turn your thoughts off about this. If you are feeling uncomfortable, good. Because folks who don't have that privilege have to think about this all the time. So if you are starting to feel some basic empathy, that you're feeling a fraction of the discomfort and the anxiety and the trauma and the frustration and the sense of urgency that people who have been in these lived experiences and intersectionally impacted as well have been feeling since, then good. And channel that energy into something. Because I will tell you, people are looking at, oh, why now? Don't we have a Black president? Well, when this insurrection happened, I went to my elders. And while I talked to people about what's happening with this insurrection, I counted 10 times since the Civil Rights Act that this conversation has came up in the national space. Not just Civil Rights Act, the Black Panther movement, Reaganism, the super predators, the private prisons, the Rodney King riots. This has continued. So if you're just getting onto it now, you got some privilege you need to check out, and you need to work that out. And if you're not feeling at least a fraction of this constantly, because I know I am, then you may not be as close to the root of the issue as you think.
Right. All right. I think that's a great way to end that conversation. We have any last thoughts before we close it out?
Yes. Hire or wire. Derrick, cut the check.
That's right. I think that's a great way to end it. Cut the check. We ready. Reparations are necessary and long overdue. So y'all really need to be thinking about that as you are thinking about your social responsibility programs and what equity looks like and how you give back to both the internal and the external communities that you serve. I think that's a great way to end that. Thank y'all for tuning in to Unpopular Opinion. Make sure you subscribe to Diverse Cities Learning Channel. We're going to be bringing you more content like this, and like and share our photos. We appreciate you. Y'all have a great day.